Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear co-chairs, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, let me also join the previous speakers in saying how pleased we are with the result of today's work. I don't have a written speech, but informally I would certainly share my feelings and views with all of you. It was an exceptional day. We heard from more than 90 partners of Afghanistan, 90 countries and organizations. This is an extremely important message that we have received, that we are not alone. We may be at a very critical juncture in our history, but we have a long list of committed, generous, and supportive partners. This is the best feeling we have from this conference today, and let me thank each and every one of you, especially our co-hosts, the government and people of Finland, represented by very able and distinguished ministers here, the United Nations, led by Her Excellency Deborah Lyons, and our hosting country, Switzerland, and the senior government officials who attended the meeting today. Our conference was successful because we achieved the objective. The objective is the renewal of partnership between Afghanistan and its international partners in pursuing our shared interests and goals for peace, security, and development. These are shared interests, and therefore we need to have a shared program of action. Specifically, today we agreed on 3 things. One, we agreed on a political and development program, very much spelled out in a document that was mostly supported by our international partners in their deliberations today. The Afghanistan National Peace and Development Framework. Second, we agreed on a partnership framework which spelled out mutual obligations and commitments. It's a unique opportunity that our international partners and the government of Afghanistan have not only agreed on a program of action, but also on mutual accountability, and that is exactly consistent with the famous saying of Afghans, "Chururi bakau ama hisab batarmainji." We are brothers, but we need to be accountable. We are brothers and sisters, but we need to be accountable to each other in this journey that we have ahead of us. And finally, we got an impressive list of pledges representing the generosity, commitment, and the supportive solidarity of our international partners. Minister Skinnery just talked about the amount. It's an impressive figure. It's more important because it comes at a time that there's hardly any nation that has not been affected by the COVID-19 in its economy and revenue. That represents an enormous amount of generosity. While every nation has had its own challenges, but on top of that, they did not forget about our shared responsibility to succeed in Afghanistan. Again, we thank you all for this level of unprecedented generosity and partnership. We heard you about the peace process. We were extremely pleased with your overwhelming support for the peace process and your welcoming of the peace talks. We were extremely pleased with your joint call for an immediate ceasefire. The fact that the current levels of violence is not acceptable, and therefore an immediate ceasefire is what the world community demands. The Taliban must hear that it's not just the Afghan people who demand for ceasefire. It's the whole of the world community. And we heard it from over 90 countries and organizations today. We heard about not only the peace process, but also the end state of the peace that will have to be acceptable to the Afghan people and our international partners. An end state that will have to be preserving and advancing the gains of the Afghan people over the past 2 decades, and an end state that will ensure an independent, sovereign, unified, and prosperous Afghanistan, where its peace and stability are neither challenged within nor from outside. We heard about an inclusive process of the peace process today. A process that will have to include not only Afghan men, but also Afghan women. Not just the decision makers, but also victims of violence and the war. It will have to be inclusive of all Afghan people. We also heard about your recommendation that the United Nations should play a bigger role in this process. We were pleased to hear about the United Nations Security Council's resolutions that are of significant importance, not only for the peace process, but also for the peace end state. We thank you for all of those points. But we also heard about your concerns that there shouldn't be any obstacle, any unreasonable position to get in the way of peace. Let me assure you, colleagues, that the government and people of Afghanistan will never be an obstacle. They will always be supportive of the peace process. Third, we heard about your concerns with regard to security. We couldn't agree with you more. The level of violence, terrorism, narcotics, and the fact that Afghanistan should not become a safe haven for international terrorism. We also heard about your concerns with regard to protection of civilians and respect for international humanitarian law. We heard again from most of you that the best way forward to achieve success in this area is to continue to support the Afghan national security and defense forces. Thank you again for your expression of support, but let me assure you that the government of Afghanistan will remain fully committed to respecting international humanitarian law and protection of civilians. Finally, we heard about your conditionalities as well. I remember when I heard a wonderful discussion with His Excellency Minister Havisto some weeks ago. Our request was, do not decrease your generosity, increase your conditionalities. Today is what we had, those conditionalities. We welcome your conditionalities on behalf of the government of Afghanistan, with the authority entrusted in us from the President of Afghanistan. We welcome your conditionalities. The first set of conditionalities relate to peace, that there should be an inclusive process, there should be an acceptable end state, and there shouldn't be any artificial obstacles. You have the commitment of the government of Afghanistan on all of those. Second set of conditionalities related to good governance. Specifically, that Afghanistan should remain a democratic country, that there should be full respect for human rights, that its government and society will have to be fully inclusive, especially of women, minorities, and the ones who require special attention. And there should be rule of law, and there should be demonstrated commitment and political will, as well as capabilities to fight corruption. There should be respect for media, freedom of speech, and there should be an enabling environment and protected environment for the civil society. We got all of those messages. Let me assure you that the government of Afghanistan will be fully respectful, dedicated, and politically willing to implement each and every one of these conditionalities. We will not let your generosities go in vain. We will not let your sacrifices, our joint sacrifices, go in vain. The government of Afghanistan will shoulder its responsibility fully. Let me again say how much we are confident and pleased with the result we've got today. I thank you all. I thank you, my colleagues present today. We thank your government and your generous taxpayers. And we thank the people of Afghanistan who have demonstrated their wisdom, resilience, and their ability to persevere under very extreme conditions, but still demonstrate their hope for the future. Thank you very much. God bless you all.